also want to talk about something Courtney Cronin just said when we were talking with her about the Bears. And I asked, do you believe the next head coach of the Bears will be on the opposing sideline this weekend? I asked it that way because it could be one of two guys. Could be Ben Johnson, could potentially be Aaron Glenn. Her answer scared the bleep out of me. She said she still feels like it could be somebody like Arthur Smith, because if you want to shop at the top shelf and get one of the more expensive, hotter name guys, you have to convince them that coming here will not be toxic, that it won't be dysfunctional, that there won't be problems with selection of personnel, that there won't be conflicting ideology, I guess is a way to put it, between that coach and Ryan Poles and between that coach and Kevin Warren. Okay, the easy solution for me then, just fire Ryan Poles and let a new general manager select the next head coach, or hire a package deal, whether that's Ben Johnson and Ray Agnew or something else. But if you are actually genuinely worried, and when Courtney says it, she's tapped in, I buy it, that this is a thought process happening at Hallis Hall. If you're genuinely worried that you can't attract the top coaching candidate because they have to be convinced of the relationship with Ryan Poles, then fire Ryan Poles.
Well, I think he should be fired regardless. I don't think that Ryan Poles has warranted his resume isn't good enough to stay on the job. I think that just by watching the games, the loss last week to the Vikings, yes, it's an indictment on the players and it's an indictment on the coaching staff. I don't think it's Thomas Brown's fault. Thomas Brown has been thrust into a very difficult situation, going from passing game coordinator to head coach in a span of 3 weeks. That's insane to ask someone to do that. So I'm not putting the losses on him. I don't think they should go on his resume, whatever. Dan Campbell was an interim head coach for the Dolphins for 9 games, and he wasn't ready to be head coach yet. It doesn't mean that Thomas Brown is never going to be a head coach. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a bad head coach when he gets the opportunity. It just means he might not be ready right now. That being said, the list of draft picks, the misses with signings, with trades, the inability to address the offensive line and defensive line in this offseason, when we were all talking about Caleb Williams coming into one of the best situations with weapons that a rookie has ever been able to come in, but you can't protect him. He might end up being the most sacked quarterback of all time. And yes, a lot of it is his fault, but still, we're not going to get into that. That Ryan Poles doesn't deserve the chance at another draft at $60 million. I don't want to hand him $60 million of cap space. What if he gives $30 million of it to Nate Davis again or something like that? You know, like, he doesn't deserve the chance to do that, let alone pick the next head coach. It's bigger than that, because a head coach can only work with what you give him. They might hire Ben Johnson, but if Ryan Poles doesn't address the offensive line again, they're screwed. If he doesn't draft someone or sign someone to be opposite of Montez Sweat, they're screwed. If you don't find ways to get a better running game, you're screwed. And I don't trust him to do that more than I trust him to pick a head coach. So I still believe this as a Bears fan, as I have been my entire life. With this regime, I will believe things when I see them. They had not fired a head coach ever until Matt Eberflus. The last time a head coach left, and I could say this till I'm blue in the face, was because of war. Someone had to go to war in order to not be head coach of the Bears anymore mid-season. So because of that, I will believe that they are swimming in the deep end of the pool as far as coaches go when I see it. I don't believe that they're going to be in the running for Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel or Brian Flores or Joe Brady. I'll believe it when I see it, because I've seen Tressman, I've seen Nagy, I've seen Eberflus, I've seen John Fox at the end of his run when he was, Kap will say he was just out here golden parachute collecting a check. I still think that John Fox wanted to win, but he just didn't have it anymore. That this team doesn't take head coaching seriously, and it's because Kevin Warren wants to be the face of the Bears. They don't want anybody to come in and outshine what they are. You're not going to get a voice that is bigger than Kevin Warren, whether it's Mike Vrabel or Brian Flores. And I don't think you're going to get someone that wants to pick their own personnel. And I'm not saying that he does, just if he does, with Ben Johnson or Joe Brady bringing in their own GM. I think they're going to want to find someone that wants to work with Caleb Williams and that is going to be willing to put up with Ryan Poles. And that pool is not the deep end. That is the second and third tier of head coaches.
Which is the part that scares me.
Yeah.
And look, that could be a Kevin Warren issue. If it is, we're going to find out. But there's one thing I'm pretty certain of. I don't know if I trust Kevin Warren to pick the next head coach. I know I don't trust Ryan Poles to go through another draft. So if I have to avoid one of those two things, it's going to be the thing I'm pretty certain of. And it's, I don't want this guy selecting personnel again. I don't. If I have to hear one more time Monday Night Football, I mean, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were waxing poetic about the cap space and how great of a job Ryan Poles did assembling the roster. Is it really his fault that they can't run the ball? Yeah, it is.
Yes, you signed DeAndre Swift.
Yes.
That's why, yes.
You signed a mid-running back to run behind an awful offensive line.
You signed a center that no one wanted anymore. Like, that doesn't, like, offensive lineman in free agency rarely happens. Good offensive lineman. Once in a while, you'll get a free agent offensive lineman. But those guys usually stick around with their teams because they're good and they're valuable.
Yeah. Like, my point is, I don't get afraid of the unknown in sports. We don't know what it is. How could you be afraid of it? It could be good. I don't know that Kevin Warren's going to do a great job. I don't have a clue what he's going to do in selecting a general manager when the opportunity presents itself for him. But what I know with certainty is that Ryan Poles is pretty bad at the personnel acquisition part of this. You want to write home about Kevin Byard? God bless. You want to write home about Jonathan Owens? That's good for you. The Nate Davis swing? Miss.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift swing? Miss. The last two drafts? Horrendous.
Keenan Allen to me is a miss too. Like, what? I mean, listen, if they were in the playoffs, if they were in the hunt, if they were, fighting for a wild card spot, I'd say okay. But Keenan Allen isn't the difference maker. The one thing I will say, Shea, is that off of what I said about I'll believe it when I see it, change did happen this year.
It did.
They did fire a head coach for the first time ever. So maybe, and now Kevin Warren has never hired a head coach. He was legal counsel. He was a lawyer, and he facilitated the stadium in Minnesota. He became, ran the Big Ten for a while. People did not like it when he was there. He's never sat down and selected a head coach to run an organization. So that's why I'm skeptical that he'll be able to do it, but it is a different voice. If we find out that they're just hiring Bill Polian again or an Ernie Accorsi type or something like that, then we're doing the same old stuff that they've been doing for years.
Well, and they've already said they'll do the committee for the head coach,
but
which I think is absurd.
But I at least have a little bit of hope that because Kevin Warren is a different voice, that maybe they get it right. They got it right with firing Eberflus. Albeit too late. The reports from, people that Ryan Poles wanted to do it after the Patriots game, fine, whatever. They probably should have done it before the season even started and got Harbaugh or tried to get whoever. Doesn't matter. The point is that there is a different voice in the room, and that's all we can do. Like, I can't just be like, okay, well, I'll check back in on the Bears when they sell the team. That's not going to happen. I can't do that. I'm a fan of the Bears. So I have to be hopeful that Kevin Warren provides a different voice and that he says, we're the Chicago Bears, and we need to have one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and we're getting the money to do that, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get that head coach, whether it be pay them $15 million, whether it be firing Ryan Poles, whatever it is, we're going to get it right. And I have to take him at face value for that because that's what he said.
Yeah, and I think firing Eberflus was a little bit of a scapegoat move because, frankly, Poles deserved more criticism then, and I was trying to say it as much as I could, but the roster construction is as much of an issue as the coaching decisions have been. When the offensive line looks this way, when the defensive line looks this way, Yurko has said all offseason that this team was built backwards. It just, now we're really seeing it when the depth that he told us he would have is Karan Amagaji getting blown by edge rushers in Minnesota, being a penalty machine. Look, I think this game against the Lions is a pretty good test case for if there's any level of improvement on that offensive line, especially the context of how you're going against it. 312-332-3776. You want to weigh in on the Poles conversation? Also taking some calls on the Sammy Sosa stuff. If you want to do that, we'll take your calls next. And you can't fire a GM without a name, so I will give you one. We'll do it next on